Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sudhakar from ISRO Satellite Center, Bangalore. With me, I have Mr. Subramania Udupa, Group Director, SVS Speaker, and Mr. Jagannath Das, who heads the Onboard Software Division. I have the great privilege of presenting the MOM AOCC software configuration, development, testing aspects, and mission experiences at this workshop at Caltech. Next slide, please. As part of the agenda, I'll be covering the flight software elements and the AOCC functions, attitude and orbit control computer functions, the flight software architecture, and typical design aspects, some of the aspects I'll be taking up. And I'll be covering the testing aspects and mission aspects and our experiences, what we have faced. Next slide, please. And in the Mars Orbiter mission flight software elements, there are many flight software systems are there. The first one is that attitude and orbit control computer, which I'll be talking about, which is for the purpose of attitude control, and it is taking care of all the orbit maneuvers, target control maneuvers, and Mars orbit insertion maneuvers. And a major part of autonomy is built into the AOCC system. The other software-based systems are star sensor, which provides the inertial attitude, the telecommand processor, and the inertial reference and accelerometer unit, and the solid-state recorder. These are some of the software elements. I'll be covering the attitude and orbit control computer. Next slide, please. The attitude and orbit control computer is basically built upon the 31750 processor-based system, which is the MIL standard 1750 architecture. This is built over the ASICs for various digital logics, and it's a modular package. Actually, we have a customized I/O bus on which different hardware are located, and the processor will be interacting. And the system has various interfaces with power, sensors, actuators, and solar array drives, and MIL standard 1553B bus for various systems like IRAP, star sensors, and other systems. Next slide, please. The attitude and orbit control basic functions being the control system elements like controllers and estimators, and the interfaces of sensors, actuators, and the thrust cutoff logics for various maneuvers, which are all handled by the AOCC system with the accelerometer processing unit. And the major requirement of the time reference, which is used for all the reference generations like attitude and orbit reference generations for pointing, imaging, or the profile for the LEB maneuvers, the liquid engine burn maneuvers, are all done by AOCC. And of course, the telemetry telecommand interface and the bus control function of the entire MOM spacecraft is done by the AOCC. And it also takes care of the solar ray drive mechanism, which ensures the pointing and generation of the power, and various safety logics. And this has two kinds of autonomy, which yesterday also was covered with respect to operational, like sequencers to handle all the activities, and fault tolerant autonomy. Next slide, please. So, like any other software design, there are a lot of challenges which are being faced by the software development. Major thing being the schedule constraints, which basically the problems are due to the system requirement generation, which takes longer time, and subsequently the software requirement gets delayed, and a lot of pressure comes on the software development. So the various strategies which are adopted is to staggered release of software. So as and when the software is developed, it goes for testing and release. And rapid prototyping, so turnaround times are faster, and we are able to go in staggered mode. And the major advantage, which we will see subsequently, is the major reusability of the older codes and other modules. And various tools, of course, are going to help us in achieving all these goals. And if we see the number of groups which are involved, like if you see our acknowledgement slide, I have put so many groups are involved, like mechanism, team, to onwards, power team, and so many mission, flight dynamics. Every group is giving some requirement for the software development, and the software size is growing, and various requirements are coming into the AOCC development. So it calls for some common methodology and process which are being adopted, increasingly adopted in our case. And we are trying to go for a standard template and a common language, and whatever the standards which we have been following, they are being adhered religiously. And the components are kept as disjoint as possible so that developments are going parallelly. So this is a major thing. And of course, the major thrust is on the complexity, increase the complexity and increase the quality requirements, which are very important for the success of the mission, which are being followed with a stringent process and product. And we have the ISRO software process document based on the IEEE 12207, which is being followed. Next slide, please. So the software design challenges basically by going for a UML-based design methodology is being adopted, and different views are used for design representations, and that is being followed. Next slide, please. If we see the software architecture, basically the OBC hardware layer, there is a real-time executive, which is round-robin scheduling. It will be continuously running software, and there is an interface layer. The input data are going through the input data acquisition layer and data processing and filter, and the outputs are similarly, there is a data delivery layer, and they are all outside there is autonomy and mission control logs. And the major advantage being the round-robin scheduling is the simplicity and deterministic, which we have a full control over the software. And of course, the shortcomings are being scalability is slightly difficult, but it is being done. And various code changes call for a lot of, it is quite tough to accommodate. And partitioning is manual, but there is a defined process to do. And the scheduling of the different processes to, if some module is going to take a larger time, it is partitioned manually and scheduled accordingly based on the cycle requirements. And there are multiple cycles running in the software. There is 8 milliseconds to do like thruster PWPFM activities, whereas some 1553 cycle also will go at 8 milliseconds, and some of them like gyro readout will be at 32 milliseconds, and so on, and 64 milliseconds for control loop, and 512 milliseconds for different profile generation modules. This is how it goes. Next slide, please. The AOCS software is basically there will be a main program and power on initialization, and there are two paths which takes, whether it is the program is running through a resident module or remote module. Basically, there is a provision to entirely run the program in the remote mode, that is in the RAM mode or in the PROM mode. This is what is the remote or resident mode we call. And this is cyclically the different modules are placed, and telemetry, sensor processing and pre-processing, and such things are cyclically done every major cycle. That is how it is done. And the modules which require the which are scheduled at 512 millisecond or they are all distributed in some part of the cycle. That is called super cycle, which are all called orbit model and autonomy. Such things do are there. And the language is ADA with safe subset. And there is a non-maskable interrupt which is used for watchdog timer action, which comes into place if the software cycle doesn't complete for 256 milliseconds. And there are provisions for remote program, and various reviews are there, system requirements, software requirements, design, code walkthrough, and test readiness review and test results review board. All this ensure that the software development and testing process is in place. Next slide, please. So if we see that the overall development of the AOCC software, we have drawn many modules from the other systems like our GeoSat program, or regional navigation system program, or remote sensing program. The interfaces have been adopted from IRNSS and IRS programs. Sensors are similar to Chandrayaan and IRNSS, and actuators are similar. And the major development has been towards the autonomy and safety logics, which have been adopted from IRS plus new requirements. And in fact, if we go through them, if we see the statistics, the new interfaces are very minimum, and the autonomy and safety logics is a major new development, which a lot of concentration was there. And of course, there are a lot of developments Mars MOM specific, that is total 25%, and 25% as it is old, and 50% have been modified and reused. The another advantage of the reuse of modules, in fact, the Mars Orbiter mission is giving a lot of input feedback to our future missions, and they give feedback back to the missions of IRNSS GeoSat program. There is a major advantage we find in this reusability of the various modules. Next slide, please. The various development phases which are being carried out are as the requirement analysis. Basically, the joint sessions are made because various stakeholder groups are involved. The joint meetings have been held, and the specific listing of the requirements are made, and goals are specified, and the use cases are drawn, and with that each stakeholder's view are made. And normally the basic functional requirement and the additional functional requirements are separately brought out so that the concentration is done properly and the development is independently taken. And the design phase, coding, design review, all these activities take place. And the design phase, actually design is basically for quick prototyping and the component decomposition and the definition of the functions, the interfaces. And at the time of interface definition, the testing aspects are also studied, and reuse aspects are very well studied to make use of the existing available modules. And the design inputs and errors and rules are available as checklists, which are always adhered during the design phase. During the preliminary design, the architecture and components are designed, and the detailed design, the specification, accuracy, precision, the sequences, and timing analysis, everything is addressed so that the development takes place properly. Next slide, please. So I'm trying to cover some of the typical design aspects. One of them is the MIL standard 1553B interface, which has been increasingly the most of the interfaces, the critical interfaces, and all the interfaces are covered under this. And we are having a topology, redundant bus topology with the selector. There is two AOCC system. One is selected, other is non-selected. The selected one will work as a bus controller. The other one will be a remote terminal. And there will be a message table like a component for each message. And the grouping, there is a grouping of the messages done in different aspects. Like there is a time critical messages which are scheduled exactly at a particular -X start, or it is divided as periodic or asynchronous, or some are like event-driven message. When there is some requirement, it is generated. And there are also provisions to transfer bulk messages which are periodically scheduled whenever there is a available time. Next slide, please. So the basic software design has been to maximize the efficiency of the data transfer. Whenever the bus is used, the data should be utilized. That is a major idea which has been put. And the data is grouped as a function-wise, whether AOCS function or housekeeping function or just for the interface handshaking. So the schedule-wise also it is described as a critical data or periodic, or some data which require with the delay are also located properly such that the delay times are also effectively used. And normally there is handshaking interfaces used so that high volume message data is used after handshaking and after ensuring the data is required. So this is how the maximizing the usage to all types of interfaces have been addressed. And the dynamic scheduling is normally minimized because our regular AOCC software is also a static scheduling scheme. So 1553 also has made a static scheduling with a minimum dynamic provision is available with a fixed determinant reliable scheme. And it provides a reliable data transfer with protocol-wise validation schemes and data-wise validation schemes and fault-tolerant logics like changeover logics. Next slide, please. So another major design which is covered by yesterday's presentation also is the autonomy design. Basically here I will try to briefly say it's a mission experience of our IRS program, IRNSS program and GeoSat program have been combined to identify the realistic and perceived requirements and address the requirements at different phases of the mission, and so that all the phases like earthbound phase to cruise phase to the Martian phase, the requirements are addressed. And major addressing was the failure effects of the autonomy logic itself have been addressed at very many places, and which we have been testing at every stage. Next slide, please. So this is one of some of the fault tolerant features which are described yesterday also. I'll try to say briefly. And interface level fault tolerant features which are like wild sample removers, and almost we take every critical decision is not taken at a single sample. Almost 3 consecutive samples are taken, and every data transfer is validated with a checksum or some other interface like validation, invalidation, and the reconfiguration of bus. Such provisions are always available as a fault tolerant feature. Next slide, please. So these software level fault tolerant features are very much present. There are time tag mode of operation, means the operation will be postponed for a future time as a time tag, and event-based commanding, which I'll be covering later, and various configurable blocks, which is a sequence of commands with some event, and various autonomous sequences, which are very critical for this mission for LEP operations, payload operations, launch phase and accretion sequencer, and master recovery sequencer, which was addressed yesterday. And software itself is having some fault tolerant features to modify the software, or there is a provision to introduce a new mode, new AOCS mode, new control mode, or new gains, or we can also include a new command if required, or a new minor cycle level also. The 8 millisecond level also I can introduce some programs. See, the critical parameters are majority voted, and there is one critical requirement of reset handling logic which also addressed, and this event-based commanding I will slightly address again. Next slide, please. So one of the typical feature is what was introduced because of the mission phase requirement. It was always addressed in case of a reset or a power down case. In case of power dip, there should be a way of coming out of the process. The AOCC should come back to the nominal earth pointing orientation. The various logics were worked out for such cases so that there are interfaces with telecom and processor, which is provided in the battery bus. So always there are the AOC in case of reset, it sends an event based on the configuration of the AOC which is selected, or the non-selected has got reset. Based on the configuration, the TCP system will decide to continue with the same system or different system, or there is also a provision to acknowledge that the reset activity is completed. Such things have been elaborately designed to ensure that the cruise phase we don't end up in any issue in the OCC system. Next slide, please. Another major operational autonomy system is for the LEB sequencer, which has been addressed for Earth-bound maneuvers, trans-Mars injection, target control maneuvers, and Mars orbit insertion operations. And the requirements are for the AOCS purpose and the downlink, the TWTA and power mission aspects, and the contingency plan in case of any eventuality. All these have been addressed in the operational autonomy. Even to carry out the rehearsal operations for the MOM, for this LEB operations, there have been provisions have been made in the sequencer. Next slide. So from now, I'm just covering the testing and mission experiences, testing aspects at different phases. The different phases of testing, hardware, software unit level function checks, and hardware software integrated tests. And major tests being the open loop tests of control systems like static test, the static error versus the output. And there is another important test which we do, which is called the open loop, which is dynamic open loop test, that is simulated input profile. In this case, the simulated input is basically generated from another computer software and it is fed into the system. The output is not fed back to the system, so that it's an open loop dynamic open loop test. This is very important for our various FDAR logics and other logic tests. And special interface tests. Suppose we get into a new interface, we normally do a new interface test such that there is no problem in integration. And another major test which we do is the onboard computer in-loop simulation, where the onboard computer alone is there and the rest of the systems are simulated, and the hardware in-loop simulation where the actual hardware control system elements are present. The mission scenario test is very important for us, where the actual mission scenario is envisaged. They are all tested in different configurations. That's a major thing which we do in different phases, and of course the environmental and integration. And in Mars orbiter mission especially, the operational validation tests have been very critical, because all the phases we had a simulation setup where we validate all the operational aspects. Next slide, please. For the testing purpose, we also have some diagnostics on board, like the 1550 cycles are completed to check, or there are errors in the message transfers, or the failures in the interface error, or bus errors, or even the real-time executive scheduler. If there is a timer overrun, they are all indicated. And these are all very important for us to do testing continuously. Continuous testing is possible because of onboard diagnostics. And even the time sync markers for time tag verification, because many of the time tag requirements are verified with this. And even some cases where the parts of the software, the error codes are put. And we have the schemes for diagnostic telemetry and the programmable telemetry system. And of course, some are like PROM and RAM checksums and onboard checksums for uplinks and validation. These are present in our software design. Next slide, please. I'll briefly touch upon the test systems which are used. This is basically a versatile real-time system which is supporting all the open loop tests, onboard in-loop simulation tests, and validation of interfaces. Here, the behavior of the system as understood or simulated. Anyway, if there's a shortfall, it is always tested with the actual interface, which is identified and scheduled. And various models are present which are used for the testing. Next slide, please. During our experience, we find the major causes of failures are due to inconsistent requirements, ambiguous design, ambiguous requirements, and design errors and margins, and mismatch in the software hardware, and time synchronization aspects, and heritage assumption, experience, and even overconfidence. And the test coverage also has resulted in some of the cases incomplete, insufficient tests, and interface clearance with not actual systems. And such things we have learned through the experience, and we normally introduce the proper tests to ensure these are all tested properly. And various solutions which are envisaged is the analysis and review and process implementation, and test case generation, and review boards ensure that these are taken care in various stages. And normally the observations are tracked, and guidelines and checklists are generated so that these are all provided as feedback. Next slide, please. So the operational validation aspects have been done during the Mars Orbiter mission. There is a requirement of the telecommand simulator being an important system that is also brought in, and AOCC systems have been brought in. And with the AOCC and integrated test system, this was validated for various missions, various phases of the mission. Next slide, please. So the software verification in all the mission phases like launch phase onwards and earthbound maneuvers, trans-Mars injection phase. Basically, these tests were done to carry out the rehearsal of the operations to ensure the operations take place properly. The attitude profiles were validated. The burn short time, which was very critically controlled for the time tagging of the operations, and various modes in onboard in-loop simulation were carried out. And of course, all the FDAR logics were verified such that it doesn't do a malfunction during entire phase. And the cruise phase and TCM logic, the requirement was much more. The accuracy of the TCM operations were verified, and various backup plans which were envisaged also verified during these operations. During the MOA operations, in addition to the EBN plans, we had the requirements of multiple plans, Plan A and Plan B. The switching of the plans in between AOCC system had to make a major operational requirement, like multiple plans, more than one plan had to be at a time available. So we worked out the plans, how to do it, and switched the plans. They were all worked out for and validated. And the contingency plans which were envisaged were validated. And of course, in the Martian phase, we have the payload operation verifications also are being carried out. Next slide, please. So for a typical TCM mission operation verification, the requirement was that accurately we have to do that target control maneuver. We introduced the test to find out the software sources, like even the resolution of the command, the exact number which is going into the onboard software, and the cycle time to cut off, revisit time, the thrust cutoff, how it is done, what is the revisit time of the thrust cutoff, and the reference selections, whether it is getting correctly selected, the actuator cutoff latencies, everything were validated in the setup, and the validation of the uplink procedures and the backup plan, everything was done. This is a typical, the operational verification which we had carried out in the mission phase. Next slide, please. So now I'll be covering some of the experiences which we faced during the development phase, which are very critical, which gave a lot of input for us. And one of the major requirements which we faced is our safe mode configuration. In all our spacecrafts, we do not use the gyroscopes or IRU reference after the safe mode for acquisition. We use the optical sensors for the post-safe mode occurrence. In Mars Orbiter mission, it was felt we should use the gyros after safe mode recovery. But since our concept is always we have to do test as you fly, so we didn't want to leave it, that the testing was conducted. But the safe mode scenario test revealed that after the AOCC changeover, after there is a changeover, we normally change from main to redundant system on safe mode. The mil standard 1553 bus reconfiguration is delayed by design to ensure that one of them takes over. It results in the synchronization pulse not going to the gyro. This resulted in the gyro is continuing the accumulation and saturating the incremental angle. So there is an hysteresis loop inside the gyro. Next slide, please. Basically, the gyro design uses an incremental angle. Actually, if we don't send the sync at basically the safe mode is occurred when the rate is very high, that is beyond 2.8 degree per second rate. In such a case, the accumulation was taking place in the gyro without sync going from AOCS. It resulted in the overflow of the actual accumulation, and the overflow of accumulation, it really resulted in the wrong polarity in some cases. See, the another aspect which was noticed at this time is the actual polarity of the rate which has been sent by the gyro is not the actual rate polarity, but it is whatever accumulated rate polarity. And due to this condition, if it has entered the hysteresis loop, there was no way of coming back. This was really an eye-opener for us. This really gave a lot of input, which we had to take a corrective action by, this was carried out at the hardware in-loop simulation phase, where fortunately, we had provided an interface for taking the analog rate information for the FDIR purpose. So we introduced an algorithm to switch to the analog rate whenever there is a saturation in the incremental angle rate. This really would have saved the mission, and it was a very important thing because as we fly, we wanted to test, and this revealed a very important requirement. Next slide, please. So another important thing which I wanted to cover, which I am going to take an experience from our Chandrayaan-1 mission. The Chandrayaan-1 mission, there were some requirements like which it was revealed that the time tag commands which are used to operate the commands after the command will be sent now, and after some time, after the actual time, the command will be operating. There was one particular case when the command is sent through the link2, it will not execute because the link2 is linked to the redundant computer and main computer is selected for control. At the time of sending the command, if the command is sent through link2, at the time of execution, if main computer is selected, the time tag operation alone will not take place properly, whereas the real-time operations were going on properly. This was actually due to a mask pattern usage in the internal command time tag execution software. But it was detected in ground checkout. It was not felt that is a scenario which is envisaged. But when we found that whereas during the critical mission operations, there was a requirement for the frequency allocation, JPL was supposed to use link 1 frequency, whereas ISRO was asked to use link 2 frequency. It was a case where because we had found in a testing configuration, this is not an allowable case, we were able to stop this requirement because based on the test result, this was prohibited and avoided. This is one important eye-opener because we should only carry out the onboard configuration as we test. Whatever the tested configuration only we should put in the onboard. This was a very good input for us to ensure that we carry out only the things, only the operations which are tested and that only we operate. Next slide, please. So another very important aspect which I will also call it like a programmable autonomy feature, which is event-based commanding feature, which is being extensively used in our autonomous features, which I am going to explain. See, the event-based commanding feature, which is providing a function which can be defined, one event can be defined, which is any parameter, any software or any software variable, which can be any parameter can be checked for a logical condition like greater than, less than, or equal to, or bitwise conditions. And if that condition is satisfied, and it will be checked for n consecutive times, which is also programmable, which can issue an action, which is the execution of various commands. This is how it is envisaged. And this has been a programmable autonomy which has come into our help for various critical autonomy functions during the mission operations, which were to bring in some fail-safe logic, which I will be covering some of them. And basically, it's a programmable autonomy which has been used. Next slide, please. So there was a very critical, which was mentioned yesterday also. There was in doing the mission plan, like flying requirement, whatever the requirements of mission plan, the various features were enabled one by one. The mission plan was including progressive verification of the MOA procedures during earthbound orbit, so that we have a control. All features were enabled one by one, and even the FDAR logics were enabled one by one for verifying correctness and no wrong trigger is happening. And there was one requirement which was always envisaged, that in case of electrical failure of the liquid engine coil, to avoid, in case during the operation there was a requirement to excite both coils together. That was one of the requirements was kept, and this test was carried out when EBN4, that fourth earthbound maneuver. But due to the opposing effect of coils, which were known that time only, it was somehow it was not tested in the initial phase due to some conditions. Due to this engine did not operate. This was a major observation. So only an important part is there were the lot of autonomy logics like timeout logics and fail-safe logics of LEB sequencer for bringing in the other attitude thrusters like thrust level augmentation logics were verified during this operation. But to come over the situation, the event-based commanding feature was of software was used. The alternate option was worked out using this event-based commanding, and by seeing the delta V achievement, the function of the coil was checked, and switching to the redundant coil was worked out as the event-based commanding. This is a very good input, very good handle we got for the autonomy function. Next slide, please. Another important scenario which was not envisaged during our initial phase, the Mars orbit insertion phase, where due to the operation of TWTS and other things and the eclipse region, there were requirements to there were cases where the energy balance may deplete in case of the underperformance, which may lead to a longer firing. The AOCC software also had a power safe mode, which we wanted to enable after the Mars orbit insertion completion. Nominally the battery safe mode was planned to be enabled after the completion of whatever the delta V is achieved. But when we worked out the different cases of this MOA conditions, it came to that due to the nominal case itself, due to the longer firing, there may be a case the battery voltage may be less than the limit what is put. It can reach a lesser value due to the energy balance depletion. So there was a case of unnecessarily declaring a safe mode. So the concern was raised if there was a requirement to change the logic. If battery is already charging, there is no need to declare the safe mode even if battery is below 30 volts. That was the requirement which came at the almost near during the Mars orbit insertion phase. This was nicely accomplished at the event-based commanding. This is introduced, and this is a simpler requirement which was added, and it was validated and it was put into the use. This is one of the major use we found in this event-based commanding interface. Next slide, please. So, in summary, I will put it like this: the simple and deterministic proven software architecture used for MOM. The modular design approach, baselining and reusability has been the major thing here. And the defined software process, the experience which we have gathered over all these missions have been very useful. And the testing and prototyping is as much close to the final configuration, and extensive testing for mission operations and the review process has helped us a lot. The MOM AOCC has finally successfully supported all phases of mission, and with this my acknowledgements are due to our chairman, director, program director, and project director, and my group director, Mr. Udupa, and my colleague, Mr. Jagannath Das, who is here, who was the architect of the MOM software, and all my colleagues. And also my sincere thanks are due to Mr. Subodh, who was constantly interacting to make this program a success and spend time at odd hours to make this mode work. My thanks to Dr. Allen, Chairman FSW 2014. Next slide, please.
Yes.
Lastly, my sincere thanks to entire JPL team who continuously provided encouragement and support for us during this journey to the Mars. And my sincere acknowledgement to all my colleagues who made this mission a success. With this, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll open for the questions now for Mr. Sudhakar.
Yes, please. Yes, sir.
I'll take it. Yeah, you want to turn it on.
Thank you for the presentation. I saw in an earlier slide for the software fault protection the mention that you do voting of commands with critical parameters, but I thought I only saw redundant computers. So I was wondering what approach you used for voting commands or instructions with critical parameters, if you only had two, or if you use some other mechanism to arbitrate if there was a difference.
Should I switch to that slide?
Can you please
yeah.
repeat the question?
What is the slide number? I'm flipping through it right now.
There's one that had two columns, left column and right column. That might have been it.
This one?
Down.
Down?
No, that's not it. There you go. 16.
Slide 16.
Majority voting, critical parameters.
In slide 16, Sudhakar?
Yes, please. Yeah. This is just a majority voting of some critical parameters which are stored in 3 places in the RAM. We have something like in E2 ROM because it is vulnerable for some upsets. We keep 3 copies of the system, 3 copies of the program because we have the provisions to change the entire sum of the software modules. We kept the 3 copies with checksum provisions. We ensure that out of 2 copies are valid to take the update. Is that the question? Or?
Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, it does.
Other question. I'm curious what sort of or how much software and vehicle level state you're saving off to handle reinitialization for a reset, how much autonomy there is there, or if it's just kind of coming up in safe mode and the operators have to handle the reinitialization.
Can you?
So
can you please
let me repeat it. So he's asking how much of your satellite state you need to store in your EEPROM. So when there is a reboot or when there is a safe mode insertion, when the satellite goes in safe mode and comes out.
Yeah, exactly. We do the storage of the sensors which are selected, which are the sensors have to be used for the post recovery. And in Mars orbiter mission, we had to keep the attitude, the earth pointing attitude reference, which is being periodically updated. That is one of the state which is being periodically updated to ensure the communication link is present. And other information such as the FDIR logic usage, whether we have to use the information from FDIR or not. And we also store 3 alternate paths to ensure that even if it misses the other configuration it uses, and whether to use the power input, the input from the battery state, how much to use. All this information are stored to the order of some 256 bytes.
Does that answer?
Around 5 kilobytes of information is stored for this recovery purpose.
So when it reboots, it's reinitializing itself?
So does it read from that when it reboots and reinitializes internal memory with that?
Exactly. It reboots from when it reboots, it reads from the EEPROM to update all the state to go for the safe mode recovery operation.
Okay.
And it also, in real time, it uses the information such as the state of the battery and the FDA, the fault state of the other inputs like sensors and actuators to take the different path. That's what is handled by the master recovery sequencer.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Nope.
Nope.
Very good. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
Sudhakar, thank you very much for this presentation. I'll give you a little applause. We really wish if you guys could have been here, it would have been much better, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jagannath was also there, who is the architect of this program. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Jagannath. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Yeah. Okay. So the next